Good day. Good day. I am Richard Lowe, the Writing King, and I'm here with John Papaloni. He's the CEO of Papaloni Capital, and we're going to talk about his business and what he does. And I'm going to hand it over to you to introduce yourself.
Oh, thanks, Richard. I am John Papaloni, as you said, currently CEO of Papaloni Capital Inc. I have my real estate license and mortgage license as well, which is kind of complementary to what I'm doing. I've been in the real estate business for the last 8 years, and I kind of grew up and around it. My parents were landlords, and I thought it'd be a great opportunity because I'm watching people go through the struggles, especially with the change in interest rates and stuff. And there's a lot of people want to get into the real estate market, but don't necessarily have the means. Like they might have the down payment, but don't qualify for the mortgage. They might have the ability to qualify for a mortgage. They don't have the down payment. So they're looking for ways to get in, not necessarily for them to move in, but as an investment, which is why I created Papaloni Capital Inc. as a way for people to invest with me in joint ventures and stuff like that, or go through many avenues, whether it's a joint venture into a real estate portfolio, or whether it's a private equity loan, like somebody wants to invest in mortgages, because I do those as well. So it's an opportunity to be in the market without having to physically own it directly yourself.
Sounds very interesting. What got you into that business?
Well, I mean, the market itself interests me. Real estate interests me. Like I said, I saw people struggling to get it. I find people who've been, they'll invest in stuff like crypto, not because they want to, but it'll be one of those, I got to get rich quick kind of thing so I can get the money to buy my home, or, you know what I mean? And it's like, so the need to be in the business is there. I mean, the need to be in real estate is there. It is something that is not guaranteed, because nothing in life is guaranteed, but it is one of the more safest investments, and it's a way I can help other people get into the market. And I have a passion for the industry. Now, being in as an agent for the 8 years, I found that my passions don't necessarily align with the job, but I have an opportunity to use my experience to expand. So my focus is really helping people with the investment side of it, more than just finding some house with granite counter.
I see. It's very interesting. Are you more of a flipper, or you in it to help? I mean, how's that work?
Well, I'm a buy and hold guy.
Oh, buy and hold guy. Okay.
Yeah. It's why when you're investing with me, it's a 7 to 10 year contract, unless you're doing a private equity loan. If you're willing to do a private equity loan, then I can do 2 to 3 years, because that's usually the average loan.
Okay, good. That's very interesting. I'm not very up to date on real estate. I've lived in an apartment my whole life. My parents had a house, and they actually wound up walking away from it. And the irony was, they walked away from it, just walked, and the state grabbed it, sold it, and there was $150,000 sitting in the house that they could go get, but I couldn't find them.
Yeah, I got it.
That was a rather interesting situation. There was money there that would have helped them greatly, but they couldn't get it. They should find some. I would have told them, had I known they were going to do it, you should just find one of those places like 1-800 will sell your house, whatever.
Yeah, it's true. Like, and that's the thing, right? Sometimes what happens is people feel so stressed out, they just throw their hands up in the air and just give up, right? Like it's not always the right answer, but when you're in that kind of stress, I mean, outside of that stress, looking in, it's easy to say, should have done this, should have done that. But sometimes when you're feeling it, you feel stuck and don't know what to do. So you just throw your hands up, and then it ends up being the wrong move. Sometimes it's the right move, but sometimes it's the wrong one.
I think it helped their stress a lot.
Yeah, exactly.
And they were in their 80s, so it was time for them to do something. They couldn't afford the loan, so they had to do something, I'm sure.
Well, that's where I come in, right? That's the opportunity I have, right? Like if someone wants to be in the business where they see cash flow, because I only buy cash flowing properties, you get the cash flow there, and you have worry-free investment in the way that you don't have to worry about the loans. You don't have to worry about anything, because it's the way the joint venture works is not just one person's investment. It's like I'm raising funding to buy the building. Like I usually tend to buy a building, like the lowest I look at is 12 units, and I trying to go to more like 24 or 48, and it's stuff like that. So there's multiple people invested, so there's a big cushion to avoid that problem, which is why I don't care about the interest rates, because the interest rates, the only thing that matters with the interest rates, whether it goes up or down, is the math I need to know on what it takes to acquire it. The interest rate goes up, the offer goes down. Interest rates go down, the offer goes up. And this is cyclical. So it's not something like it's one of those things where, oh, it's went up, it's never going down, or it's gone down, it's never coming up. For 40 years, it's been going up and down like a yo-yo. So the only time you lose in real estate is when you have to walk away or sell. If you can hold on to it, you never lose. But that's what it boils down to.
Yeah, I've heard the same thing about stocks. You go in it for the long term. You don't go in it for the short term.
With the exception that stocks has the potential to hit zero. Real estate does not, right? Because unless you sell, right? Because real estate, even worst case scenario, if nobody wants the house at all, you always have the land. The land's always worth something. Worst case scenario, you keep collecting rent, so you're still earning something. Where when a stock is at zero, it's at zero. There's no coming back.
True. That's true. That's true. And cryptocurrency is even worse.
Yeah. I'm not a fan of it.
I'm not a big fan. Although I do wish I'd bought Bitcoin when it was down at, in the pennies, just because it would be, but I'm not a gambler, so I never did that. That's an interesting question. Could you buy a house with Bitcoin?
There's numerous debates on that, and there is possible ways to do it, but it's very, very hard because the seller has to be willing to accept Bitcoin. And most of the people who are pro real estate and have invested in real estate their whole life, they believe in real estate, not Bitcoin. And most of them are not going to want that. Now, you have to find someone who's young enough, who understands it and is excited about it, that decides that they're going to sell their home. And yes, they want Bitcoin. How many of those people exist?
Probably that many.
Yeah. It's been done before in Canada that I know of. But again, it's like you said, the number of stories I've heard that it's been done is probably on one hand.
Yeah, and I suppose you could always take the Bitcoin out in dollars and sell it that way. You don't have to use Bitcoin.
Yeah. And that's the issue. The reason I want to use Bitcoin because it's hard to cash out of them.
It's hard to cash out, and it's not directly traceable.
Yeah. And that becomes the other problem. When you get the Bitcoin and you cash out, and now you're using it towards real estate, you got to prove where the funds came from. Right. And that's how do you answer that? Which is why when you're buying a house, the first thing they say is make sure your deposit has been into a bank account for at least 90 days. Because anything less than 90 days, they're going to ask you where the money came from.
Interesting. Yeah, very interesting. It's a whole new world to me. I knew somebody who, at the place that he used to live, he was a flipper. So he would buy property and then flip it. And he thought he was going to make a fortune. He just got a property and he had an $80,000 profit, he thought. But then, of course, he had to fix the house. And that $80,000 turned into a loss real fast, and he never was able to make a living at it.
Well, that's the thing. It's hard. Everyone wants to do what they see on HGTV, and HGTV makes it look so simple. But again, it comes down to real estate. You make your profit. The majority of the times you make your profit on the buy, and especially if you're flipping it because you don't have the time, right? Because if you're flipping it, it's a short turnaround, which means you have to buy below market, which is why most people who flip do not use an agent. They go to homeowners. And to me, this is going to sound bad, but to me, I believe the idea of flipping is that you have to take advantage of people. And in a way, it's not the person buying's fault, it's the person selling. Because the person you're looking for is the person who's not going to be any wiser. And your whole pitch to them is you're going to knock on the door. Have you thought about selling? I thought about it, but the fees are expensive. Well, hey, why don't we do a private deal where I can pay you X, Y, Z, and we don't have to worry about agents, and you can save the commission. Now, why is that person so anxious to save you commission? It doesn't cost them anything, because what you're doing is you're finding the homeowner. And there's people out there that are like this, that they're such sticklers on other people collecting commissions that they would rather burn the place than you earn a commission. So they think they're saving money. You drove the price up, and that's why real estates don't drive the price up. It's the market that drives the price up. But people are such sticklers on paying that it eats at them, and they can't get past it. So now they hear I don't have to pay an agent. They're excited. Let me sell it. Now, what's the benefit of that? The investor. Why does the investor have to do that? Very simple, because what happens is if your home's worth $1 million, my offer is going to be to you somewhere between 700 and 750.
Mm-hmm.
Now, and I say, don't have to worry about commissions. Now I get excited. Problem is, if you sold it through an agent, and even if he got you 900,000, calculate the commission on that. That might be 45,000 as an example. Even if it's 50,000, you got 850 versus 750.
Mm-hmm.
So you're not really ahead. But for me as a private equity, private buyer, I need that 750 because I need to put in the $200,000 savings into the renovation. So now after the $200,000 renovation, I'm at 950. And 950 was the market value that we just determined, because you always ask for a little bit more than market value. It was the actual market value of that house before it got renovated. So now I bought at 950, add 50 grand for commissions. As we said, we're at $1 million. My profit is 150,000 because I sold it for 1.150. And there's how you make money. But you have to find those deals, and they're very hard, and people are very impatient, and they're always rush. And sometimes you're looking for that guy that I just told you. And believe it or not, I made that guy sound stupid. But there are guys out there that are very well informed, and that's why they don't need the agent. And what ends up happening is you think you're getting a deal because you got him, he got you. And you bought that house at 950, and it was only worth 950, and there's your loss.
Right. This guy looked for people who basically were in a fire sale situation.
Yeah.
I think he went to auctions a lot and bought them.
But those aren't always deals. Sometimes they are, but they're not always deals. And that's what it comes down to. And that's why it goes back to what I said, working with an agent is important. It doesn't mean you have to buy on-market deals. You could buy off-market deals, but you need somebody who knows the market that you're looking at inside out, and they will know. Because just because it's an auction doesn't mean you're getting a steal. Sometimes I've been to places where I've seen auctions actually sell for more than what the actual market would have sold for.
Yeah, I believe in his case, one of the things that drove him batty was he bought a house, paid cash for it, I think, and he couldn't get it permitted to do the renos. The permitters wouldn't do it.
Absolutely. Sometimes there's restrictions, and that's the other benefit. You have to know where to research that, and you have to have your plan in place. If your plan requires you to turn a one-story house into a two-story house to make money, and you're not going to get the building because the area doesn't support that, I mean the permit, not the building, then you have no hope. You're not going to be able to get the price of a two-story for a one-story. It just doesn't work, right? So there's due diligence that's required. And then that's why there's not an instant flip. But a lot of people, and again, people get lucky, right? Sometimes that HGTV story does happen. And what I mean by that is that sometimes you get in a heated market. Like take 2021. You could buy a home in January of 2021 for $1 million. I just like using that number. And you buy it for $1 million. You put in $200,000 in renovations. By the time you're done is September. Now, what happens is in September, the old house would sell for 1.2 by the appreciation, but the renovated houses sell for 1.45. And sometimes you have somebody who loves that design you did so much, they'll actually pay 1.5. So now you made the money because they overpaid, because they fell in love and got emotional about the place. So you did the right rentals. But what happens if you're the guy who bought December 2021 and then you did the flip, you're ready to sell in June 2022 when they've already raised the interest rate 3 times. And that's where people started getting really burned.
Yeah, and I gather the market's really tight right now.
Yeah. Now there's still opportunity, but you really need to get it. And again, at the end of the day, what it boils down to, whatever you're doing, your contingency plan has to be that I'm willing to hold on to it. And if it's one of those things that I need to sell this within 8 to 9 months because the interest rate's going to kill me and I don't have the money, not a good buy. Hold off.
Yeah, I can see that. You're doing a gamble then, and that's probably
exactly. And the casino's more fun, I'll tell you that.
Yeah. I don't gamble. I do occasionally buy a lottery ticket, but I don't consider that gambling. It's more like watching the money go down the toilet, and it's kind of entertaining.
Exactly, and that's my point, though. At least with the casino, you're playing some form of a game. And I mean, I'm saying if you're going to do that flip in the scenario I told you, then you know what? At least the casino, you're playing a game, not chasing after contractors who don't show up, right? Yep. So it's not something you should do. I'm not a believer in a flip. I don't mean that you can't make money sometimes, but nobody talks about the time they lose. They always talk about the time they win. And I'm one to bet if you look at the stats, there's more losing than there's winning.
Hmm. Yeah, I wrote a Ghost wrote a book for a guy who actually is a property manager, and what he does is he takes over the mortgage, and then runs the property management. So he rents it for mortgage rate plus some percentage. I think it's 50% or 40% or something. So he rents it out, and then he either buys it or he um, runs it for the owner. And he's got a little bit, quite a good little business running, just doing that.
Yeah, exactly. At the end of the day, everything requires work. There's no simple, easy way to do something. There's no such thing as I woke up rich this morning. It's small little things you do consistently, which build over time to become a bigger and bigger empire over a long period of time.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Every success has been a 10-year success. Every overnight success has been a 10-year success, right? Because what happens is we see them when they just popped up, but the reality is they've been doing it for 10 years to pop up.
I'm finding that as a ghostwriter and a book coach, I find that I have to market myself, and the marketing is over time. I've got people who come to me after finding an article that I wrote 4 years ago that's spitting on Facebook. And how did you find me? Well, I read this article. I wrote that 4 years ago. It got buried, and somebody I'm trying to close right now, and it's like, this is weird that he's reading this old, but it's the buildup.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Right. And that's why the buy and hold works, because at some point in time, statistics show it time over time, over time, over time. You need patience. And
Yep.
if you want to invest in something that's quick, try your luck with Bitcoin, see what happens. Right. You may win, you may not. I mean, but real estate's never been quick. It's always been long. Look, let's be honest. Let's look at history. Anything that turns out has always been slow and steady and boring. It seems like the simple, boring things that you repeat over and over and over tends to be the things that turn out.
Well, part of it is you build a reputation, you build up equity, all kinds of different things come into play when you're doing it over time. When you're trying to do it quick, you're making shortcuts, you're taking gambles and risks. It may pay off. It probably won't. It depends on what kind of person you are. I tend to like the long term, although sometimes I want the short term.
Yeah, I get it. Everybody wants the short term, right? Because it solves a instant need, or an instant pain, not a need, an instant pain. Because we're always feeling pain, and that's why we're doing what we're doing, is because we're trying to find a solution to that pain. And if you have an instant reward, the pain goes away quick. Right.
Yeah.
So now the other thing I want to caution anybody look at that, right? Because someone says, oh, real estate's the best investment. I'm going to go out there, I'm going to buy it. And then all of a sudden, oh, it didn't work for me. Yes, because you got to be careful, know what to do to due diligence. So that's why I said always use a realtor, not because I'm a fan of paying commissions or not paying commissions or I even care about any of that. It's the due diligence, either, especially for the first 2 times. After you've done it a couple of times, you kind of learn what you're looking for. So that makes it a little bit easier. But I mean, if you're buying your first home or first investment property, you don't want to do that alone. And the second thing I caution on, if you're doing a rental unit, find out which states are landlord friendly. Now that sounds like I'm encouraging, scumlords, and that's not what I mean. And I'll give you an example, right? Because I'm a realtor in Ontario, and my message to people is, if you're buying a home to live, buy in Ontario. If you're buying a home as an investor, do not buy in Ontario. And my reason is we are not landlord friendly. And right now, the landlord and tenant board, which I call the tenant board, because every time they change the rules, it's just screwing the landlord more and more. So now it's all tenant rights and no landlord rights, as far as I'm concerned. So with that being said, if someone stops paying the rent in Ontario, there's an 18-month backlog in the system. And with that, so it takes 18 months to even get to the court level for eviction. Now, if you go there and you put one number wrong, like if your rent renews on the 1st of the month, I'm supposed to give you the notice by the 30th. If I gave you the notice by the 2nd, after 18 months, wrong date, your paper gets shredded, come back, try again. And I got to wait another 18 months if it's still a backlog. And so you can actually go 2-3 years without getting paid, right? And that's really scary. So that's why I say it's too risky to invest, in places that are not landlord friendly.
Right here in Florida,
my favorite place.
Yeah, it's so landlord friendly that it's almost unethical. I mean, people can get evicted after a 7-day notice.
And I'm all for that if it's for the right reason.
Well, yeah,
Again,
there's reasons.
Yeah, here's my point, right? If you decide that you don't want to charge $1,000 rent, and like if you're charging 1,000, you decide now you want 2,000, screw the tenant. I'm not for that. I'm not for that at all.
Of
That's why
course.
I said I'm not pushing the scale forward. You know what I mean? I'm pushing is the fact that it's got to be a fair and reasonable thing for both sides. And
Right.
the minute something's not reasonable for whichever side, that relationship needs to break.
Yeah, my rent increase 2 years ago was 30%, which is huge. Now in
Wow.
California, the most rent increase I ever got was 3% because it's all rent controlled.
Hmm.
I used to live in California. But yeah, if you don't pay the rent in Florida, you're out within a couple of weeks. It's
Yeah.
literally you're gone, and they will have the sheriff there to make sure of it. And
Yeah.
it's very tenant unfriendly. I think that's going to change pretty fast because it's
Well,
gone way too far.
well, that's the thing, right? Like, again, I believe in fairness. I'm okay. I'll be honest. I'm okay with the controlled rent increases. That's not what bothers me. What bothers me is when somebody decides they're not going to pay, and they're in your house, destroying your house, and you can't get them
Of
out.
of course, of
That's what
course.
bothers me. The rate control, just like inflation. If inflation is 5%, rent should be increase should be 5%. If inflation is 2%, rent control could be 2%. It doesn't matter, right? Because you just keep up with inflation, so you're making the same money consistently, and somebody's not going from I got a decent job to all my paycheck went to rent, and I don't know what else I'm gonna do. That's extreme, right? Like, and it's I mean, there's got to be some sort of balance.
Yeah, they lost almost 40% of their tenants within a matter of a couple of months when they raised the rent that much. Just the place was a ghost town because nobody could afford it. And when you could move across the street and save 30%, well, it's a lot of people don't have a lot of belongings, so it was easy to move.
Yeah, see, I like to buy a place. I like to have the same tenants as long as possible. I mean, I'm not upset when they leave. If they have to leave, they have to leave. But I'm the type, like, I look at my parents. They had the same home and they had the tenants there for 28 and a half years.
Hmm.
Right. So I'm fine with that. Um, and I'm fine with keeping up with inflation. Again, as long as rent's paid on time, they maintain the property relative. I mean, I'm not talking about wear and tear. It doesn't matter who lives in a property, whether it's me or a tenant. There's going to be wear and tear.
Of course.
But I mean, I'm talking about if you decide you're playing darts and you miss the board and you hit the wall, I expect you to fix that,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. Here's the maintenance person was telling me he went into a room, a tenant place, because he got a leak, and went in there, and obviously the leak had been going on for months and months and months, and it was just carrying water out. There was mold and stuff. He said, "Dude, you're paying for this. We're not, because you could have called us when it first started leaking, but you've ignored it now for at least 6 months, and um, that's that's still ongoing." But you got to maintain your own place a little bit, at least.
Uh, yeah, and that's the thing. Something like if the look part of the maintenance thing I was talking about, before we have to have money aside for it, right? Like as a landlord, roofs are going to break. They're only meant to last 15 years.
Less in Florida, I think, because of the humidity.
Well, you know what? I'm not sure which one's worse because we get snow. So between the two, I'm not sure
Yeah.
which one's worse, snow or anyways. But either way, we'll even say if it's 10 years, right? And if it's a house, the average roof repair is going to be about $3,900. So that's what it's going to cost. Do that over 10 years, that's $390 a year. You should have that part of the rent, $390
Yep.
of that profit should be set aside. 10 years
Yep.
comes down the road, tenant calls, hey, there's a leak in my bedroom. It's the roof. Call the roofer, get a new roof. Tenant's happy because, wow, I called him, he cared, and I don't have a leaky roof. My stuff's not getting damaged. Landlord says, tenant called me, so now I'm not replacing my whole house because it got destroyed. Everybody wins.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my maintenance people told me, and the managers told me, report things immediately. Don't wait, because we got maintenance people. We'll fix them right away. And they do. They fix them the same day or next day. But if you wait and it builds up, like this one guy who waited 6 months to report it, it might come down on you. And then he's stuck, because if he moves out, he's still stuck for it.
Yeah. And this is the other thing I look at it. I believe, and this applies to all business, we're not just talking about real estate, any business. There's too many people out there that see everybody as either competition or the enemy.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't really work that way. Because if you do it that way, you're in a constant struggle, always an uphill climb, right? Like, stop seeing competition as the enemy. Stop seeing people as the enemy. Now, I've asked somebody before, like a landlord that I had a conversation with, and said, you have a retail store, you own a retail chain. You know what I mean? You're doing pretty well. Yeah. Well, if somebody comes into your store, and bought a pair of shoes, and they said, oh, this brown is the wrong brown and there's a scuff in it, you're going to say, oh, fuck you, part of my language.
Okay.
You know what I mean? And no, you're not going to say that. No, that's the customer. We got to make sure we get it right. Okay. So for the shoes at your store, it has to be right.
Mhm.
So why is it at your building, when they tell you they got something leaking, it's screw you, ungrateful tenant? Why isn't those tenants are your clients? They're your shoe clients. And except this time, your shoes is the house, not the shoes.
Yep. And when you're paying rates, Florida rates are not cheap. When you're paying $2,500 or $3,000 for a 2-bedroom a month, you expect service. That's not petty cash.
But that's why it goes back to what I said: being collaborative with people, whether
Yeah.
it's business or whether it's being in
course.
collaboration with your tenant. It's collaboration. You'll always grow bigger as a group together.
Yep.
Than you will trying to be the Lone Ranger.
Yep. Yeah, it's very interesting business. I'm of course a ghostwriter, and I have the same thing. Sometimes the book doesn't quite come out the way the client wants. I'm going to make it right, and we're going to talk, and we're going to go through it, and we're going to revise it, and we're going to make the book the way they want it to be, because that's what they're paying for. And
makes sense.
Most of the time that's on me. Sometimes we split it half and half. It just depends on what the problems are and so forth, the situation. But that's an important part of being in business, I think, is understanding the fence. You know what I mean? Okay, this guy's being reasonable. It's not right. I'm going to go out of my way to fix it. Or this guy's being unreasonable. It's definitely his fault. Then we're going to have a different conversation. You have to be aware of that.
Absolutely. Now, I'm going to ask you something. With you being a ghostwriter, I mean, you're in an interesting business.
I am.
Yeah, like I'm fascinated with what you do, to be honest.
Okay.
It's because one of my dreams is always to write a book. Now, I got a lot of things in my head, but it's a matter of sitting down and putting it on paper.
Mm-hmm.
And no many times I said, oh yeah, I'm going to do it. I load up the computer, stare at the screen. You just got that face.
Those are the people who hire me.
Now, eventually I'm going to get serious about it. But yeah, like, so it's fascinating, right? And my problem is thinking of the words, right? Like, think of what to put down, what's interesting, what's not interesting. We're going to take out, we're going to put in, and where do I start? Because let's be honest, the book is really about a story that can lead to something. Like, there's always that hero that there's always the villain in the story, and it's one of those things that's the part I don't know what it is, and sometimes I just blob away and I have no damn idea what it is. And somebody says, hey, that's the point. What's the point? Yeah. Right. Like,
well, that's what I do is I have a lot of interviews up front where I listen to you. Let's say you were going to do it. And I would just listen and take notes, lots of notes, recorded, of course, and learn about you. I'm learning about you, and not necessarily your subject, but about you, because I need to write the book as if I were you. And that's tough. It's almost being an actor. In many ways. So I have to know the way you speak. I got one client who wanted to write his book with swear words and things, because that's the way he speaks.
Interesting.
And most clients don't want that, but he wanted to have not hard, not swear words every 5 minutes, but or every page, but occasionally, if it's an important point, say damn, and that was different. And another one was from the South with the drawl and everything, and he wanted that to come through, that culture from the South. And it's something that I have to catch up on. Of course, I do the interviews, I do the interviews, then do the first chapter, and then we revise that first chapter until done. That can take some time because I'm not you. So you're going to get it and you're going to go, this is not what I wanted. That's normal. And we're going to sit down and we're going to go through it front to back. It's probably going to be 5,000 words, so it won't take us that long. And I'll fix it and you'll get it back again. Okay, this is closer, but it's still not right. We'll do that again. This is much better, but you didn't quite catch me here. Good. And then when we're done with that chapter, the next chapter, I'm going to be a little closer. so there won't be as much. And then the next chapter a little closer, and then so forth until the end of the book. By then, we're just banging it out because I've got it, and it's an interesting process. And it
Yeah.
does mean you take I have to take my ego, put it over on the table, and leave it there because you're criticizing what I'm doing, and that's hard to take sometimes. And it took a lot of it. It was a while before, I'm sure every ghostwriter goes through this, or every author who gets edited, same thing is I get a lot of criticism, but it's not criticism of me. It's criticism of the work. That's the way you have to look at it. Is you're criticizing what I wrote. You're not telling me I'm a bad writer. You're telling me that this is crap and it needs to be fixed. And that's okay. That's part of the process.
Yeah, you know what? You're absolutely right. People take things personal because what happens is there's a lot of people out there that associate themselves with the work as well, right? Where they believe they are their work. And what ends up happening, in a way, that's a sad state. But the reality is, hey, we're brought up that way, right? Like, let's be honest, the whole go to school, get a good education so you can get a good job. And you know what I mean? Like that, like, what are we being programmed for? We're being programmed and told us that you work hard, you get your promotion, and then you get pay increase. And when you get the pay increase, your pension grows. And you know what I mean? That's the kind of story we're being told. So therefore, how do you get promoted? You work very hard. So now when somebody turns around and you got this piece that you wrote and you put there and say, look at my work. And I'm like, I worked hard on that. And they turn around and say, yeah, I don't like it. And all of a sudden, well, what do you mean? Right? Because they're attached to it because that's what we were brought up.
Of course. And writers suffer from something all creative people do, and probably everybody does, something called imposter syndrome.
Yes, I get that.
That is a big deal for creative people. Is you just don't think that you could have done this, and you think it's bad. So every time you get sent it back to the client, he's going to hate it. He's going to hate it. I'm sure he's going to hate it. And then he gets it, and of course, he doesn't hate it. He he might not necessarily like it 100%, but he's not going to fire you almost certainly unless you're just terrible. He's not going to. Usually they'll fire, ghostwriters get fired because of attitude.
Got it.
They don't get fired because everybody knows we're going to revise this. You clue them in. We're going to revise this 15 times before it's done. But if you got a bad attitude about it, probably the same as you in your business, the attitude is what will kill you or make you.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Like, we're a people business. Right. And people want to deal with people they know, like, and trust. And if you have an attitude, that's a sure way for them to not like you or trust you.
Right. Although sometimes you got to make sure you're not walked on. So sometimes that attitude does need to come out, and like you cross the line, dude.
Well, there's a difference between arrogance and confidence.
Yeah.
And I think that's the line that creates that.
Yeah. But the ego thing is something that I had to learn, and I'm sure every ghostwriter has to learn. You have to put it aside because I'm not writing the book for me. I'm writing it for you. It's not my book. My name is not even going to be on it, most likely. I think I've got 3 books out of the 48 I've written for ghostwriting that have my name on it in the copyright section on the buried on the back page, which is cool because I can use it on my website then. I have to keep that in mind. This is not my book. I wrote it, but it's like me being a contractor. I build a house. It's not my house. It's there. It's your house. You bought it. Somebody bought it. Bank bought it. I don't know who bought it. So the contractor has to. So they want to rip the roof out and put a little telescope thing in there so they can have a little telescope looking into the sky. I think that's stupid, and it's going to cost them an extra $100,000. But it's their house. I've always wanted to have a little room on top of the building for a telescope. Never did. It's now that I'm older, I'm thinking that would have been stupid. But unless I had millions and millions of dollars to just burn. Yeah, interesting.
For sure.
So what do you do to when you're not working? Hobbies and things.
Wait a minute. There's times that we don't work.
Has to be.
To be honest, most of my everything I do revolves around work.
Yeah.
And I don't mean the same sad state of affairs where I'm always at the office, I'm putting in 40 hours a day. And no, I don't mean that. Prime example, I go out, I'm networking. Well, what's the networking for? Meeting new people.
Right.
What is the meeting new people for? Well, the more you know, the more you grow. right? And it's one of those things that you not necessarily means that there's going to be business today, but at some point in time, like prime example, I'm going to use a stupid example. Since we've been predominantly talking about real estate, I'll use real estate. I may meet somebody at a bar or whatever, and he's a plumber. Well, I don't necessarily need a plumber today, but at some point in time, say, "Oh, there's a leak. I need a plumber. Who should I call?" Hey, I met Bob at the local bar about 3 months ago. Why don't I call Bob? Maybe he'll help me, right? And that's that's a way to do it, right? Like it's like I don't. Most people wake up in the morning and say, "Oh, what idea could I have, or what can I do today that's going to help generate income, or what's going to help me get my goals?" Reality is you grow and you build based on your network. And so you should wake up in the morning, do your morning ritual, and then go, who's got my money? And figure out who out there, who do I need to meet that's going to help me get closer and closer to my goals? Who do I need to know that can help me find the solution to the problem I have? And
Yeah, I
by
do.
doing that, you can pretty much go in and find people, and build up people to help you get there. Uh, yeah. So, and that's the point. So it's all about the people, So point is, every time I'm out, I live. Short form of all that was I live intentional. Everything I do is intentional.
Okay. Well, I was a terribly introverted person most of my life, so the networking was definitely not easy. When I went into ghostwriting as a full-time thing, it became essential because if you don't network, you don't get business in this field. And I had to break that introversion. As you can tell, I'm not super introverted now. Although I do spend a lot of time working at home because obviously of my career, but I like to settle down when for creative people, I might be a little bit different. I have to recharge that creativeness, and I do that by working on model kits and things like that. Usually just half an hour at a time, just to make the mind kind of relax, and then come back and start writing again, or networking, or whatever I need to do. So it's interesting. Interesting.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep. Well, we've basically hit the time that we need. And do you have any closing remarks?
Absolutely. Like, what I'm going to say is anybody watching or listening is bottom line at any day, an idea is just an idea unless you execute it. I mean, don't spend too much time analyzing and get stuck in that analysis paralysis. Instead, come up with an idea, get started, and you can pretty much adapt and change as you go instead of trying to perfect it from the beginning. Because no matter how much you try, you will never perfect it. And an idea you have will be still an idea a year from now if that's all you do. So pretty much anything is possible if you're willing to put in the time.
And you should start writing that book today and take that to heart, because otherwise you'll never write it. And I had a client, she came to me, she was 78 years old. Her lifelong dream, her only bucket list item was to write a book. She hired me. We took 16 months. We wrote her book, published it. She passed away.
Oh, shit.
She achieved her dream. And if she hadn't hired me, even though I was definitely a little more expensive than she thought, she would never have achieved her dream. And she was so happy when she saw that book on Amazon that it was worth everything just to see that joy on her face for that book being there for her. So
Makes sense.
my recommendation is, if whoever's listening to this, if you've got a book in you that you want to do, call me, call some other ghostwriter, sit down and write it yourself, get a book writing coach, whatever you need to do, and start now, because who knows what's going to happen in a year, and you're going to get distracted and life's going to move out of the way. And I'm sure the same is for you could say the same for real estate. If you want to jump into real estate, do it. And if you don't have the money and stuff, we'll figure that out. And whatever the barriers are, figure it out and do it. And that's, I think, the way life works is, as you said, you got to do, because you can think about things all day long. I think about all kinds of things. Probably a lot of things I don't do.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, it's been great having you on.
Thank you.
It was an awesome interview. And where can we find you?
You can find me on Instagram at instagram.com/JOHNPAPALONI, or just go to papalonicapital.com and it'll take you to wherever has my information.
Okay, yeah, and those links will be underneath the videos on both the webpage and on YouTube. So people will be able to do them. So just go down below the video.
Mm.
All right. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you.